Okay, hi everyone, this is SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com, and it's time for Longplay game number 9. This one features a rather atypical Sicilian dragon, so let's jump into it. So this is a pretty standard first, 9 moves? So we get into the dragon, and I was really looking forward to this actually, because in my Blitz games, from this position, I think I've actually put 2 of my Blitz games on the channel actually, where I defeat the dragon in sacrificial style. So this has been very good to me. But then my opponent played a funny move, something I've certainly never seen before. Queen c7. And this move looks so strange to me. I actually looked up in the database afterwards, and white has something like a 77% win rate. So it's not the best move, that's for sure. It does have, I think though, it might be a really effective blitz weapon, because the most natural move for white, especially if you're playing, on autopilot, if you just castle, that just runs into knight takes d4, the discovery attack on the bishop, and after take knight to g4, everything's attacked. The bishop's attacked, the queen's attacked, the other bishop's attacked, and then after simply move, take, 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 we're down a piece, and black has a winning position. And he's attacking, right? So that's not very good. So simply move the bishop out of the way. And I'm still thinking, okay, I want to attack, I want to sacrifice. So I'm going to castle, and let's do it. Then my opponent played this, a5, which is a funny move. So just look what happened. I ended up playing a4, take, take, bishop e6, take, take. To reach this position, let's back up. As soon as he played a4, this weakens the b5 square, of course, right? Either one of my knights could jump in. And I had the option of doing it right this second. I could have played knight in, it attacks the queen, so why not? The queen probably has to retreat. Then I can play a4, stopping the pawn, and just look at the queen side right here. It's protected, everything is protecting everything, basically. Black has almost no chance of ever breaking through this over here. And if it continues like the game, bishop e6, take, take, triple castle, right? Okay, black's going to bring his knight to b4. He's going to bring his rook to c8. But then what? The knights are mutually protecting. The pawn reinforces the knight. It's impossible to chase this knight away without the light square bishops. And so my queen side is 100% secure. And this would give me all the time in the world to slowly improve my position and either advance over here on the king side, or I could bring the rooks over here, maybe exchange bishops, and advance in the center. So I could do whatever I want, basically, and black does not have the normal Sicilian counterplay, or at least nowhere close to what he would normally get. And the reason this works, right, it's the knights reinforcing each other right on that weak square. So when I played a4 right away, that gave him a chance to exchange a pair of knights. And now I cannot get that same bind over here on the queen side. Bishop e6, take, take. Now here was one last chance to fully secure it. I had the chance of playing knight b5 because, we'll just look at this in the game actually. Because I ended up castling. And then he was able to play queen c4. And now, if I were to play b3, he could come over here and maybe he's threatening something like this. Maybe he can get a rook over and play b5 with some maybe sacrifices, I don't know. But the queen is certainly annoying over here. If I didn't castle, if I played knight b5 here, because now if he comes in with queen c4, I can play b3. If he tries to come over here, well, I could either take and ruin his pawn structure, or alternatively, I could just do this, chasing the queen away, and everything is great. So this was one last opportunity for me to make sure I kept the position intact. And normally I do this, right? Normally I love playing those positions where I have a nice, stable positional advantage, nothing major. My opponent has no counterplay. I thrive in these positions. But I was so thinking about the attack that, oh, I want to just play h4, h5, sack, mate, boom, instant immortality. That's all I was thinking about. And so I completely ignored these positional considerations, which is a really bad way of playing chess. So again, he brought the queen in. And it's annoying. There's no easy way to get it out. I mean, white's still better, but not as better as I could have been. How about that? And so what do? Unfortunately, I was still thinking sack, mate, and I ended up playing g4. And it wasn't until, I wasn't really calculating too well in this game, let's be honest. I didn't even realize that this pawn here was so weak until pretty much the moment I played the move. I played the move, I leaned back, I smiled, I was happy with myself, and then I said, oh shoot, this pawn's weak, and it's on an open file. Like, the rook is facing right at it, and it's like, oh dear. And I'm the one who opened the file for him. This knight could also do something like this, doom, doom, where the knight would be attacking the pawn. So the position's not so easy, certainly. And if I have to do something like bring the rook over here to f1, then that means the rook is babysitting a pawn and not helping me attack. So, this isn't very good. There's a much easier way of doing things. I could have just played, again, like a normal Sicilian, h4. He can never really play h5, right? Now this square is so incredibly weak. Imagine me getting my queen over here, followed up with g5, opening the g file, and things are going to be bad. He'll probably just bring his rook over. I can play king b1, again, making sure I'm nice and secure, and then slowly get the attack going. This would have been the prudent way of playing. Okay, I'm not going to get my, 20-move checkmate, but I still have a potential attack, and my position is still pretty good. After g4, though, I think I'd rather be black. He starts the knight maneuver, knight to d7. We exchange bishops, take. And then here, I was thinking between two different moves. The move I really wanted to play, the move I originally envisioned when I played g4, was h4. Yes, it does give up a pawn, but then I planned on playing h5. And this is possible, but it gives black a lot of counterplay, because all of a sudden, black has the rook takes c3. And there's a couple of variations. Let's look what happens if I take it. Well, he's just going to take over on a4. The pawns could march. The knight's got some good squares, right? Or maybe go here, attacking the pawn, threatening to come in. The rook's going to slide over, and black's attack is certainly faster, right? In fact, he's actually threatening mate right now, so I have to do something about that. Remember about, what was it, 5 moves ago, I had the chance of completely locking down the queen side with a knight here, and a pawn here? Well, that's gone, right? Completely. Rome is burning right now. And so that doesn't sound very good. Another possibility after rook takes c3, maybe I could keep going with my attack. H takes g6. And then there'd be a little variation roughly like this, in which, if you count the material, black has 2 pawns for the exchange. However, my pawns are very weak. There's a lot of weaknesses here. You can imagine the knight coming here, attacking that pawn, or coming here and attacking these pawns, or moving around. There's a lot of potential squares for that knight to go. His pawns, okay, the structure is bad, but it's not so easy for my rooks to attack it. Right? I mean, okay, this pawn is weak, but how do I get both my rooks to attack it? My pawn's in the way. Right? I can't double my rooks on the h-file to attack the g-pawn. So this endgame is, it's unclear, but I think black's got the advantage here, or black will be the one who's really pushing, and the computer thinks so as well. So this is all why I didn't play h4. Just because rook takes f3, and then the possibility of the rook coming in with the attack, or even him doubling and bring the other rook down to the second rank. It was just too strong. Let's be back up. So I went for the second possibility, f4, which the computer confirms was the best move. It also doesn't lose a pawn, at least right away, so that's great. But then, of course, there's knight c5. And the knight and the queen and the knight and the queen, and he's coming in. And certainly my initiative is not going anywhere where I thought it would be. And I didn't see anything better. I ended up just playing b3 here. And it's funny, because there's a possible variation here that I was really worried he was going to play, with knight takes e4. I take his queen, he takes my queen, I take his knight, he takes my pawn. So I'm down, I won a knight, yay, that's great, but he's going to take one of these pawns, is going to fall, right? The rook can come over. My pawn structure is an absolute mess. He's going to guaranteed win one of the pawns. And then he's got enough pawns for the piece. Maybe he can win more. Maybe the pawns are stronger than my knight. The computer doesn't think so, but I was really worried about this. This was a real possibility for me. And it turns out I didn't even need to do that. I could have played this fantastic move instead of b3. Sorry, instead of b3, queen to e3. And the idea is I don't need to play b3 to defend the pawn, because if he takes it, rook d4 with the skewer wins it. Notice how the queen has moved out of the way of any possible knight forks or knight jumps. Right? If he tries to take with knight takes c3, it doesn't hit my queen. So this would have been a really good idea, because then I could have, and because again, rook d4, chase him away, and keep going. Instead, I played b3. He played queen b4. I advance with my pawn, so we're both playing on our respective sides of the board. Rook a to c8. That rook facing my king, that just looks too dangerous. I move my king out of the way. Then he took a pawn, which seemed very greedy to me. Take, take. So now the center files are opened up. I'm going to probably win one of these pawns, or sorry, I'm going to exchange for one of them. My rook's going to slide over to one of these open files. Something's going to open up, and things are going to be great. So I thought. Now, there are two possibilities here that I had a hard time figuring out what was better. Do I play f takes g6 first, or do I bring the rook over with tempi? Doesn't matter. In the game, I took with the pawn, which of course was the wrong move. Isn't that always the case? Right? You have whenever you have a choice, you almost always pick the wrong one, no matter what. Let's just look what happened. So he took back, then I brought my rook over, and then he took another pawn, which again, I thought was monumentally greedy, but the computer thinks he can hold on here. Even though the g file, the f file, the e file, everything is completely open, his king apparently is secure enough. We'll take a look in a second. Look at this position. And the one thing to notice is that the queen protects the e6 square, so I can't just win the pawn. And it also gives him time to play e5. So I can't really gang up on this pawn. So let's back up. Had I played rook e1 first, okay, he could take the g4 pawn. I could then take on e6. And so we can see the difference is the f pawn is blocking the queen from going to e7, and I've got the threat of rook takes e7 check, and then queen takes d6, and now his king is definitely unhappy. The computer gives the following line, rook f7. We just look at a couple moves. Take, 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 take. In which white is doing better just because there's queens and rooks left on the board. My king is safe behind his wall of pawns. I can easily go here, and there are no possible checks, especially if I put a rook on the second rank to protect the c-pawn, whereas his king is wide open. And so there's a very good chance at some point I'll be able to use a series of checks, fork, pick up a pawn, maybe a rook, and then win the game. The computer thinks white has the initiative here. So this would have been the correct way to play. rook first. Because, and the reason why, is I can invade on e6. Unfortunately, we got to this position, and I thought my pressure on the G pile would be great. And there is some pressure there, but white would be able to, black could withstand it. In the game, he played queen h4, which makes sense because the queen is physically blocking the h-pawn from moving. My main plan in this position is to, double or triple on the g-file, and then get the h-pawn to go. With the queen here, I can't move the h-pawn. But look at what would have happened. Let's say he plays queen b4 instead. All right, so my queen, I don't want to exchange queens. So I go here, I'm attacking g6. He could have played rook f6. And this is a surprisingly tough, black has a surprisingly good defense here. The rook is defending g6. It's hard to put more pressure there. I can't play h4, the queen controls the 4th rank, and he's threatening rook c3 to push my queen off the 3rd rank. And black's up 2 pawns. And if he's able to consolidate, he's just up 2 pawns. That's it. And in an absolute worst case scenario, his king might even be able to come over here to d7. And so my attack on g6 isn't enough. So that's kind of amazing. I thought for sure once he opened the g file for me, this would be it. But no, the computer says that that is a very, very tough defense. When he moved over to rook h4, I'm able to play queen g2. And so I'm still able to do my plan. I'm going to come at him, basically. And if he's not, and then I'll bring this rook over or one of these squares, see what happens. Notice that playing rook f6 here to defend the pawn, well, for one, I might just take this pawn, but also the rook f1 at any point is threatening to remove the defender and then invade on g6. This is important. In the game, my opponent then blew it, essentially, and he wasted an interesting position by going for an instant win. And his idea was that if I were to take with my king, he comes down with check, it's a fork, I'm going to lose my queen. Now, I do have 2 rooks for the queen, but he's going to pick up this pawn, and again, he's up a lot of pawns. However, I don't need to take with the, I can take with the queen, and then when he brings the rook down, I have rook d2. And so this is the move that he missed, and I'm up a rook. Not bad. That said, the game's not over. I'm going to skip the next few moves a little bit quickly. It's not too important. Basically, I'm trying to get into an endgame. If I can exchange queens, I win, basically. So that's my goal. He checks. Queen c3 is, of course, the temptation, but that would be an absolute terrible. Whoops, because the queen is pinned. I can't come back, so let's not blunder. He blundered. Let's not counter blunder. So I just move the king away. He comes down here, which is kind of silly, because that exchanges one of his good pieces. And again, my king is perfectly fine. So what I need to do here is, again, I just need to exchange queens. If I exchange queens, everything is great. How do I do that? Well, I'm going to basically do stuff like this. Maybe get h4, h5, create threats around his king or on his weak pawns, and see if I can force him to exchange queens. Because once that happens, the endgame shouldn't be any problems. So he moves the queen, I bring the rook over just as planned, he checks. I could play queen c3 here, pinning him, but that gives him an excuse to play e5, breaking the pin, and he's using his only advantage, his pawns, right? Maybe they could start moving. So there's no reason for me to give him an excuse, basically, to push those pawns. So I just move my king over the way. He then plays d5. I offer an exchange of queens. And he plays d4. I thought really quickly here. I just had to make sure that I could exchange queens. And really, I have to, right? Because if exchanging the queens here leads to a not winning endgame, then I really have no hope of winning this game. Really. So it has to. As a general rule, if the kings are in front of the pawns, so if I can get my king over, which I can very, very quickly, it's almost impossible for the pawns to win. And if I can get the rook somehow behind the pawns, where I can check the king or pick up these pawns, it's the win is almost guaranteed. So this is a two-step process. King in front of pawns, rook behind the pawns. And so first, let's get the king over. King, king, king. Okay, that was great. So now the next step is get the rook behind the pawns. And so there's not much open lines, so I played h4, take, and then my rook's able to slide over. There's the king up, take, he comes up, and then the rook is here. And so we can see what's going to happen is I've got lots of checks. I can pick up pawns. I can do more checks, pick up more pawns, and the win is pretty much guaranteed. In fact, I was playing a little bit too much on autopilot here, almost like I was blitzing these moves out. It's not a blitz game, Smithy. What are you doing? I could have just played king e4, win the pawn, win the other pawns, and then there's nothing left. So that would have been the absolute easiest way to do it. But what I did, I mean, it's just as effective, right? Now the threat is to bring the rook behind the pawn. He ends up playing king f5, which has nothing to stop it. It might be interesting. What would happen if he does this? His pawn's only 2 moves away from queening. It's no real problem. I can just bring the rook over here, and the king can stop the pawn. And so if his king moves away from the pawns, right, unless he's threatening to bring the king here and push these guys, again, he's got absolutely nothing. The king is within, right, the square of the pawn. So that's it. As it was, I checked him, I bring the king up, threatening the pawn, win the pawn, and then he finally resigned. So maybe not the most interesting endgame. I mean, there's a point here, right? You look at this position. I mean, the pawns are kind of dangerous. If black just needs a few more tempi, right? To get these guys going, right? Maybe he's got some chances. But again, king in front of pawns, rook behind the pawns, even rook all the way back here, or I can even check him first. Maybe the check isn't that good. It doesn't matter. Rook behind the pawns, king in front of the pawns, almost a guaranteed win at this point. And that's true for pretty much all rook and pawn endgames. But the main thing I want to look at, right, is, again, it's the thought process. That's what I'm really trying to convey in these videos, is that my thought process is wrong throughout here because I was thinking too much about the attack. I was going everything in the attack. I need to castle and get the pawn storm going as fast as possible. But my opponent makes a positionally dubious move here. And I just bring the knight in. And I still get my attack. I still get everything, but I have that extra positional edge. And I didn't even think about this possibility because I wasn't open to it. I was too busy thinking about the attack rather than getting, how can I increase my advantage? Right? How can I improve my position? And so that's normally something I'm pretty good at, but clearly it's not working, or it didn't work in this game. So that's something I need to be careful about. And sometimes we get into those positions. I feel like attacking, and so we try to attack even when there's no attack there. We need to dig deep and continue to be objective, because once you lose objectivity, that's generally when you lose at chess. Well, that's it for this one. Again, in a couple of days, I'll have the analysis, the text analysis on my blog, SmithyQ.com, so you can check that out if you wish. Another video should come out next week. Maybe not. I got an unfortunate dentist appointments coming up, which unfortunately involves dental surgery. Yay. So, depending on the medication, if my mouth is screwed shut, I'm not sure what they're doing. They just say I need some stuff. So hopefully next week we'll have games going as usual. If I play really crappy next week, it's because I'm recovering from dental surgery. Otherwise, that's that. So like and subscribe, all that. It'd be awesome. Comments, criticism, always love to hear it. But that's it. So thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.